Hello. Okay, so today I wanted to cover a quick subject that is a little bit, it's not necessarily hard, but it is different if you've never added fractions before. So first thing I wanted to tell you is there's a little bit of a rule, okay? Actually, it's not a little bit of a rule, it's an actual rule. So there is a rule in adding fractions that you cannot add a fraction with two different denominators, okay? So let's think about that for a second. You can't add two fractions that have different denominators, okay? So today on your math assignment, you guys all got a problem that looked like this, right? Now, if you notice, remember what the denominator is. The denominator is this bottom number, right? And the denominator tells you how many pieces make up the whole, okay? So it tells you how many pieces make up the whole, okay? So that's why in order for us to add fractions, the denominators have to be the same because we have to be adding based on the same number of pieces of the whole, okay? So let's look at this for a minute. What do you think we could do to make these denominators be the same? Just think about that for a second. Maybe what do you notice or what do you wonder? Okay, I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds. 5. Okay, so here's what I notice. What I notice is that one of my denominators is 100 and the other denominator is 10, okay? What I also notice is that I know that 10 is a factor of 100, meaning I can multiply 10 by something and it will equal 100, okay? So here's what I'm wondering. What I'm wondering is what do I do to make this turn into 10 or turn into 100? Can I make it turn into 100 without doing anything else to it? Nope, I can't. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to break this process down into 4 special steps, okay? So if you ever watch Special Agent Oso, that's where the 4 special steps comes from, although he only says 3 special steps, okay? So whenever you're adding fractions, this is the first step. So step 1 is to check your denominators, okay? So I'm going to write that down. Step 1, check denominators. Okay. Step 2 is to make them the same. The same. Finding the lowest common multiple. Okay. So make them the same. Find lowest common multiple. Okay. Now, you may be wondering, what is a lowest common multiple? Okay, it's actually super easy, okay? So this is what you do. You start by listing out multiples of 100. So if I was listing out, multiples of 100, I would say 100, 200, 300, 400. Okay, so I'm going to write those down just so that you can see it. So factors of, or multiples of 100. So that would be 100, 200, 300, 400. Okay, and you can keep going. I'm just not going to. Okay, now, so I listed out my factors of 100. Now I have to list out, or these are not factors, these are multiples. Now I have to list out the multiples for 10. So think about it. How do I list the multiples of 10? All right, you're right. So I would count by 10, right? So I'd say 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. Okay? So, do you guys see a common multiple? I see 100 here, right? I also see my 100 right there. So my lowest common multiple is going to be 100. Okay? So that was step 2, right? Step 2 is I found my lowest common multiple. So I have my new denominators, right? And my new denominator is going to be 100. Okay? So step 3, right? Step 3 is now I have to make equivalent fractions using the new denominator, okay? So equivalent is a fancy way of saying equal. That's what it means. Equivalent just means equal, okay? So if I'm making equivalent fractions, I'm going to use the new denominator, okay? So here we go. Now, am I changing the denominator on this first one? No, I'm not, because my denominator is going to be 100. That means this stays just the way it is. I'm just going to leave it alone, okay? So I'm going to leave this fraction alone. But now I have to adjust the other one, right? Because the other one says that the denominator is 10, and we've already decided that we need to change that to 100, right? So this is where I'm going to make an equivalent fraction, okay? So here we go. Now, remember, I told you what equivalent means. What equivalent means is it means equal. So here's what we're doing, right? I'm looking at this and I'm saying, what did I do to 10 to make it turn into 100? What did I do? Let's see how far did I have to go? I had to get all the way to 100. I know that when I'm skip counting by 10, I have to multiply, I have to count by 10, and I have to count 10 times, right? So I had to multiply it by 10, right? So if I multiply the denominator by 10 to get that new denominator of 100, I have to multiply the numerator, or that top number, okay? So what you do to the bottom, you always, always, always have to do it to the top, okay? So if I multiply 10 by 10, I have to multiply 3 by 10, okay? 3 by 10, so I'm going to multiply that. And we all know that 3 times 10 equals 30, right? So step 1, check your denominators, right? Step 2, make them the same by finding a lowest common multiple. So what you're doing with a lowest common multiple is you're skip counting by that number, okay? So if your denominator was 100, you would count by 100s. If your denominator is 10, you would count by 10s until you get a number that's the same for both, okay? And in this case, it was 100, okay? Step 3 is you make an equivalent fraction with the new denominator, okay? So that's what we just did. So 3 out of 10, or 3 over 10, is equal to 30 over 100, okay? So we did that. Now, step 4, this is the fun part, okay? Step 4 is that I am going to just write the problem out and add it, okay? With the denominators being equal, all that good stuff. So my problem is now going to look just like this, okay? So remember, when you were adding fractions that had the same denominator, you just added the top number and you didn't do anything to the denominator, right? It's the same thing. Now that you have the denominators the same, your denominator is going to be what? It's going to be 100, okay? So I'm going to write my denominator as 100. Now I just add the two numerators, okay? So if I was going to add 13 to 30, I'm going to get 43. So my answer for this one is going to be 43 over 100. You could also read that as 43 out of 100. Okay? All right. Thank you. Hopefully this helped. If you have questions, put them in the comments and I'll try and help you out.